For our Mental Wellbeing Monday, I would like to introduce you to Dr Geoff Toogood, who is a cardiologist working at Frankston Hospital and a Beyond Blue speaker. He is a long-time lover of the water and swims regularly, having swum an English Channel relay, ROTTNEST Island solo, 28 lawn pier-to-pub swims, and competed in the recent Masters World Swimming titles in the pool in South Korea. He is also an active life-saving member with his two daughters. Geoff founded Crazysocks4docs after his own experience with mental health issues to break stigma, especially in doctors and healthcare workers. We are thrilled to have Geoff here with us today. And with that, Geoff, I invite you to share your screen.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me, which is good.
Yep, can hear you loud and
share screen. It's me. So
beautiful.
Let's go back to the start. So thank you for your kind words. It's kind of cool. I'm going to go through a few things. Kind of now know what it's like to be a TV person speaking into the camera with not much feedback from talks. So essentially this is about normalising the mental health conversation. You've had like lots of talks, it seems, over the year, and I'm just going to kind of navigate you through my story and kind of a bit of what I do just around mental health, particularly in doctors and healthcare professionals who in Victoria have been pretty much under the pump in the last 6 to 7 months, particularly in the recent lockdown. Before I start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I work and live and recognise their continuing connection to land, water and community. And I pay respect to elders past, present and emerging for wherever you are watching this presentation from. Bit about me, just so you know, a bit in the introduction. I'm a father of 2 daughters who one's doing year 11, one's was meant to be having a gap year in France this year, but it's now back in Australia because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm a swimmer, a medical practitioner, so a cardiologist, a Beyond Blue speaker and mental health advocate. And I founded Crazysocks4docs about 5 years ago, and I'll tell you the story of that. Also an active petroleum member with my 2 daughters. My youngest daughter was very excited and looking forward to racing for the first time as a driver in the Aussies in the middle of the year, but unfortunately didn't get to do that because of COVID. Also a swimmer. This is me swimming in ROTTNEST a couple of years ago. It's a long swim. The year after me, it also beset by big fish that decide to swim under you. I'm glad I wasn't in that year. They pulled a few people out of the water because of an angry great white shark. I'm not sure the difference between a friendly one and an angry one is, but I think I would have got out anyway. And this is kind of solitude in the English Channel. Nice day at that time. The water was smooth and not surrounded by much. Often there's a lot of boats, but there's a crew around us as well when we're swimming across the channel. I was lucky enough to swim a relay in 2016. I attempted a solo a few months later, but was pulled out with swimming-induced pulmonary edema about 2K from completing a solo. And fortunate enough to swim in the Worlds in 2019 with the PowerPoint swimming team that I swim with in Gwangju. Sort of a distant memory now, competing in even just a local swim or even travelling overseas. And you notice the kind of mantra they had for the world, which was dive into peace in the world, both in the masters and the seniors, or the elite swimmers that were the couple of weeks before us. Just a bit of a background, and you've probably seen us, and why do we talk about this, and why is mental health so important? Well, these are the kind of figures. This is a Beyond Blue slide related to anxiety, depression and suicide. In over a lifetime, around roughly 1 in 3 women or 1 in 5 men are likely to experience anxiety, and the numbers you can see on the other side, 1 in 6 women, 1 in 8 men are likely to experience a major depressive episode in their lifetime. That means at any one time, 2 million people are living with anxiety, 1 million people are living with depression. And sadly, and part of Movember's issue is around men's mental health, is that 8 people take their own lives every day in Australia, 6 of whom, in fact, closer to 7 now, are men. How did I start Crazysocks4docs? Well, I was a healthcare professional doctor that had recovered from a major depressive episode. But unfortunately, in my profession, I experienced stigma, both during and also on return. And I wanted a way to kind of address this and other issues, particularly in healthcare. Because without healthy doctors or without healthy healthcare workers, we can't take care of our patients. Now, around that time, I'd bought a new pet when I was recovering, a golden retriever, really more as company and as a kind of inverted therapy dogs. And a therapy dog, although essentially it was because I wanted a new pet. Golden retrievers are beautiful and friendly dogs and provide company, someone to go for a walk with. I was living at that stage alone, and so at least if you go out for a walk with your dog, you might run into someone who you can talk to. A little bit different at the moment, but that will change. And the thing about dogs is they're non-judgmental when you return home at night, and so they will give you a fairly reasonable, they will just be interested in you when you turn up home. This is the dog, Sammy, cuteness personified. Wouldn't think he'd have a naughty bone in his body. And as often the case with puppies, they eat clothes, go through washing, and unfortunately they ate in my socks one day, except he left a pair of odd brightly coloured socks. While I was buying brightly coloured socks, I was buying some happy socks and other socks to kind of brighten up my mood at that time. Unfortunately, turning up to work, and you have to understand in medicine, a lot of doctors wear very black socks under black pants and with black shoes. And so at that time, brightly coloured mismatched socks started a conversation that I wasn't right behind my back. And that in many ways is inappropriate because all I had was a pair of brightly coloured socks on. But also, if they were concerned, they should have come up to me and spoken to me. In fact, I was quite well at the time and pretty much recovered. In the course of this is some friends of mine from Queensland, the Abbott family. This is us in our kind of crazy kind of socks. I've got my tiger socks on. And unfortunately, there was a third sister from the 2 girls here who died, took her life, was a doctor in healthcare, and so their family are ambassadors for my program. Now I'm going to talk about normalising the conversation and why it's important and sort of how you create a safe place. I come from Beyond Blue as a speaker, and at Beyond Blue we have a large speaker group, probably grown to about 300 now, that share their stories about mental health, and they have a wide cross-section across the community so that they take in all the normal demographics of our population. So young, old, male, female, you know, they may have a story for postpartum depression or anxiety, or an elderly male kind of a recovery story. And they share their story. And why do they do that? Because it's very powerful. And you'll note that not only Beyond Blue, but other organisations such as Lifeline have their storytellers, Are You OK? And Movember also share stories. Beyond Blue probably has the biggest. Those speak of Euro, but they all share their stories. And it's the sharing of the story that's powerful, particularly in this area. They share the vulnerability, which is a sort of a word that's becoming more embraced now, particularly because of Brené Brown's Brené Brown, who's a researcher in the United States, has spoken about vulnerability, and her TED Talk is one of the most in the top 5 or 6 TED Talk watches that's been downloaded around the world. And for us, it's always difficult when we speak. It's always hard because we're sharing a part of where we've been, and it's not a story that's often shared. So why do we want to normalise it? We want to normalise it so that it's no different to other injury or illness. Now, that's not, by normalising it, we're not trivialising it. Normalising it is saying that you have anxiety or depression or other mental health issues, that we need to treat you with the same respect and confidentiality and non-stigmatising behaviour as we would if you broke your arm or you hurt your shoulder. It's not trivialising it by normalising it, but it's understanding that this is a similar illness or condition that you may have to deal with. And we do it because one of the commonest reasons people don't seek help is the stigma around mental health issues in many cultures around the world, and particularly so here. And it's a powerful reason for not seeking help, and it's because of that, and probably more particularly in men, it delays treatment, often with very serious consequences. As I can say, it can be very harmful. So people would not trivialise you, or if you broke your ankle, hurt your shoulder, had some other illness, and understand there's a recovery period that needs to be retreated, and you'll eventually get better. What we want to do in normalising the conversation is saying that, yes, it is no different to other illness or another injury, and with treatment and help, you will get better. And just to re-emphasise them, the stories are very powerful, particularly now in sport. Lots of sports players, sportsmen and women are sharing their stories, and people will respond to this story. And it gives them connection, particularly the story is similar. And a lot of the stories have similar threads in how the people have developed, or how they've come to realise they have anxiety or depression, or how they've managed their condition. But there's a particular connection. It's even a better connection if that's from your craft group or the area you're in, or the sort of a similar population of people. Now, there's some stories on the Beyond Blue website, and there is a kind of warning about this. These are, I'm still part of 8 people we shared our stories as a group. This is a screenshot of the initial promotion, and now Beyond Blue are rolling out each of our stories individually over the next 4 to 5 weeks. They've already shared 3. They chose 8 people because of the number 8, which I said before, people died by suicide. And this is us telling our story. Now, I'm going to kind of put up a little bit of my story. I'm not going to talk for a long time. I think we've had a long year and a lot of Zoom meetings, so I don't want to kind of blast you by Zoom again. And it's kind of a deliberately busy slide because it's kind of what your mind is doing at the time. It's very busy. Often with thoughts, many thoughts running through your mind at the time. Things that I can, if we start at 12 o'clock on the slide, it's kind of a mind map that I put together, is my sleep was poor. I wasn't able to get to sleep. I was waking up early. I was feeling sad. One of the reasons I was not getting a lot of sleep, as you can see, is that I was ruminating, which means you're going over and over things in your head. The difference between going over something in your head and ruminating is with rumination, you're kind of expecting to get a different answer to what has already occurred. And so you go over and over something that's happened, hoping that it will change the way it will play out, but it's not. And that will affect your sleep. I felt hopeless, with no future, worthless, a failure. Unfortunately, I had suicidal ideation. And there's also this sense of being overwhelmed, poor concentration, as withdrawn, emotionally disconnected. My diet was a little bit off. I wasn't eating as well, and I kind of more lost weight than put on weight. And simple tasks, either work or home, became very difficult. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And not being able to sleep then makes you tired throughout the day. It makes your concentration again poor. Then you come home again, then you ruminate again, you get another poor sleep. And so they all kind of feed off each other. This wasn't transit, this was over many weeks to months. And there's a lot of things. There's kind of a slide from I go to my workplace, and there's some workplace issues. I was isolated at work. I had some marital issues. I was dislocated because of that from my children, who I'm now not dislocated from. Bereavement within the family. There's workplace stresses, and there's a few other, perhaps maybe I had a family history or past history that made me a little bit more vulnerable in a sense. But a typical kind of issue, perhaps more for men, with this isolation, divorce, workplace issues, isolation from children. Now, in all this, there is the thoughts, because now I'm recovered and I'm well, working, is that in all this, despite how bleak and dark it is, there is hope, there is resilience, and there's recovery. So when we always talk, we always say that there is always this hope. And then by building resilience now, resilience is kind of a word that we kind of use carefully. Resilience is both personal, but it's also a village. So your resilience, a part of a team or a part of a group, is far better if the team is all working together and supporting you. You will feel far more resilient in that circumstance. So it's not just isolated, it's not just you, and there is recovery. I'm sitting here before you giving this talk. And, you know, importantly, as we go through to this season now, people who need help sometimes look like people who don't need help. So it's very difficult to tell. Often very easy to tell someone that's got a broken leg, you know, a broken arm, their hand's bent back where it shouldn't be. But someone that's struggling may just look like the next person. Now, I'm kind of just going to cover a little bit about what's going on. You've obviously got some more stuff coming on now. The COVID-19 pandemic, there's obviously the physical issues caused by the serious viral infection we've been exposed to, and thankfully in a good place now in Melbourne and Victoria. But there's also the mental health issues related to the multitude of problems that are going on, particularly in Victoria and Melbourne, with our very significant and severe lockdown, and workplace issues and financial issues related to work and other issues. As far as that is concerned, particularly if you look nationally, there's been increased calls to all helplines, perhaps 50, 60, 70%, certainly to Beyond Blue. Predominance of those, not unexpectedly, would be in Melbourne and Victoria, and there was peaks timed with both lockdowns. Again, I talk about awareness and stigma in regard to this, and that's why I'm giving this talk. And why? Because it normalises the conversation. Now, the other thing to do is we're talking about is creating a safe place. The reason I started talking about this, I felt that we're getting very good at creating awareness around mental health in Australia. We'll probably have one of the best awareness kind of processes going on compared to around the world. But we need to start doing more. We need the sort of situation where those people, where the awareness is created, they can have a situation where they can get help, then they're supported in that environment. So I'm kind of thinking of this was driving to work. By normalising the conversation, a safe place, for me, now with the sort of restrictions being lifted and us being able to get to the beach will be a great place to feel safe, particularly hopefully in a culture at a sporting club that has a high, good people in it, all doing good things. One of the good things about volunteering, and I should have perhaps mentioned it earlier, is when you volunteering either as we do for surf lifesaving or in other areas, it has a positive mental health and mental improvement process. So it helps. It will help you. One of the things we kind of talk about when we give other sort of talks Beyond Blue is one of the ways to stay well is to donate your time. It makes you feel better by doing it. So by us being volunteers and giving back to our communities in this way with a very positive culture, hopefully that is the sort of support, that's the normalisation of the conversation, and it's the safe place. Hopefully people will feel that the Lifesaving Club, maybe where they're not working with their workmates, maybe they're not with other people, they feel safe if someone asks them if they're not feeling well or okay and supports them. The reason I share my story is hope will allow others not to feel alone, because you do feel intensely alone when you're going through these sort of issues. Now that's kind of the end. I'm happy to take some questions, sort of time to 30 minutes, okay? What would you like me to do, Sheila?
Firstly, beautiful time management there, Geoff.
I've done a few talks.
Yes, you have. Look, folks, I've popped a couple of things in the chat line for you to copy and paste and look at a little later on. But firstly, Geoff, thank you so much for your openness, your insights, and
Do I need to
your knowledge. What's that? Sorry.
Do you want me to click the screen? Because I haven't got you. I don't know what. I've just got this thing shattering. Should I hit escape?
That's okay. Yeah, you can close that.
Yep.
Yep. Can you see me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Beautiful. As I was saying, Geoff, thank you so much for your openness, first of all,
Okay.
and your insights and your knowledge. It's been reported that because of this campaign, people are getting help, and that is just incredible. And for somebody like yourself that gives so much to others, both as a doctor, healthcare worker, and more recently over the last several years as a speaker, talking about your experiences, Geoff, how much does it help you?
Oh, it's pretty good. Look, there's the good and the bad. There's the kind of yin and yang and stuff. I mean, all the talks take a bit because it kind of sometimes re-triggers where you've been in the past, although it's not so bad. I'm pretty good. I'm good. But it does help me. One of the things as speakers that we not struggle with, but we kind of don't get our head around. When we got inducted, Jeff Kennett said, you know, you won't realise the people you help. And for us as doctors, or, you know, if you rescue someone at the beach, you've got the direct help that you've rescued that person. Boom, that's the action. But we give talks or I write articles, and I've got no idea who's read it or whether they've got help, but people will come up to me and say they've got help. So kind of the reach is far greater. So knowing that's very important. I mean, it's certainly got people. Some days you've probably got more people help than I've done spending the day at work, you know, and I think that happens with every speaker. But for us, if we change one person's life or save one person's life in a year by talking, then the speaking program's been achieved. And I think, you know, what I probably should have said also about the COVID is it's kind of, whether the calls have gone up because of the stress, it probably is a combination of that. But the other issue is that people have kind of realised that maybe they've kind of triggered in a sense that maybe they kind of weren't okay before they went into the lockdowns or before all this started, and they actually do needed to get some help. The government's made it much easier to get help. It still needs, you know, by providing extra supports for psychological services, by increasing funding to particularly Headspace, which is an organisation for sort of 16 to 25-year-olds. So it's, I think there is that sort of thing that's coming out of it. I think the kind of realisation that that this is an abnormal time and it's stressful, and it's okay not to be feeling kind of like things are going swimmingly, because sometimes they're not, and that's why I think there probably has been more people getting help.
Yeah, which is a good thing. Geoff, Andrew, one of our listeners, has a question for you, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes.
Andrew has asked, can you give some ideas to help somebody in the middle of a panic attack?
Oh, okay. It depends why you're panicking. Generally, look, I have a couple of things. What I did, there's a separate thing with regard to panic attacks. I should have talked about the kind of toolkit I developed. I had a toolkit before I started all this, which is how to stay well. And the toolkit was simple things like making sure I got sleep, making sure I minimised the alcohol, making sure I exercised, making sure I stayed connected with people, particularly around this time after spending a day dealing with COVID at the hospital or whatever. I decided, you know, you've got to minimise the amount of extra chatter that was on all the media outlets. A lot of it was wrong. So you've got to kind of get it from the right sources. So, I wouldn't go home and watch the news. I go home and watched, I've watched a lot of new TV series. I've worked my way through Schitt's Creek and a few other shows that I never knew about. But anyway, I've learnt them. Sort of panic attacks are kind of, that's kind of not something I've ever kind of had too much about. One is maybe the first thing is if there's a circumstances you know that will make you panic, such as crowds or, speaking in public and all that, is to kind of prepare yourself. Maybe not avoid it, but if you get disturbed by lots of crowds, which remember what a crowd was, it's kind of the football, but like a crowd, you may or not want to leave before, wait till a few people go before you get with lots of people. I would, for me, if I was starting to panic in certain circumstances, I would just sort of close my eyes and start taking slow breath in through the nose, breathe it out through the mouth. Breathe it in through the nose, out through the mouth. And you can kind of, that's one way, and that's kind of slowing your breathing, slowing your heart rate down. The other way that people can do, or you can do it, is to distract yourself. So, you might want to stick your hand in some cold water or put some cold water on your face or tap your chest or something like that, which just means you're focusing on something else. If you're getting a lot of panic attacks, then you probably need to kind of maybe just ask and seek. Often it can be just managed, not so much by avoidance, because sometimes you can't avoid what you've got to do, but you can manage the way around it. And they're the sort of things to slow it down, because you're kind of panic, you're getting this adrenaline surge, which is the fight and flight action that is happening, which is something that we would have to keep us alert and protect us, but it may be just a bit high. So you need ways to kind of either distract you or to slow it down and slow your breathing down, slow your heart rate down. That's what I would do.
Wonderful advice. Thank you, Geoff. You mentioned really briefly about a toolkit.
Oh, yeah.
When and how did you start that, and how would we do the same or do similar? Well,
I started that a while ago when I got ill, and just the way I know to stay well. Now, it's not a rigorous, you can't have a rigorous toolkit, otherwise you're ticking too many boxes. But generally the way you stay well is that if you get a good night's sleep, you're part the way there. If you eat well, and these are all simple things. And by eating well, I mean vegetables, normal sort of reasonable diet. You minimise alcohol, because alcohol can have effects on people with both things, make them a little bit more anxious, and also using alcohol at times of stress is probably not inappropriate. Staying connected, we know that if you're just staying connected with someone, now that's hard at this time, but we've found ways around that. Not kind of as ideal, but connecting on Zoom or connecting on FaceTime or connecting by just ringing someone is just enough, even a text maybe, because it's someone else in the world. Connections are very important. It's why we do well by being members of sporting clubs, because we're connected to someone else. We see them, we're distracted. So we've got sort of some support. I exercise. Swimming's my kind of mindfulness and keeping well. I'm learning a musical instrument, learning to play the drums, which beats out my frustration. But that's something else. It keeps me distracted. And also I minimised, one of the problems now with the Zoom is that all these things, our social media has been overloaded. So I minimise what I was hearing. Now we're getting a lot of positive news now, because we're getting a lot of donut days, which is great. But when I was going hard, you just got to kind of be very careful about what you hear and what you're doing, because that can make you feel a little bit worse. So I would only watch I would only watch small segments on the news. I wouldn't watch endless bits and pieces because, you know, it wasn't helpful to my mind. And then check in either with my psychologist or my doctor periodically to make sure I'm going right. So I've already got someone, check in. You can just develop your own toolkit, and a lot of it is around simple things, you know, just eating well, sleeping well, and it's kind of like having something to do, having something to look forward to, all the other things. So maybe even plan something for the weekend, you know, in essence, you know, date night, you know, or something like that. I mean, that's kind of silly thing, but, you know, it can be, you know, meal, not so easy. It's getting easy now, but even catching up with friends for coffee, sort of thing, because that's something to look forward to. And volunteering is also important. It's, you know, things like that, you know, something to do, which may be your job, but you have something outside what you do is also good. And that's kind of my toolkit. You can develop your own toolkit developed around all those sort of things. And a lot of the, you know, if you go to the kind of landing pages of Black Dog, Beyond Blue, you know, Headspace, all those will have kind of ideas that you can meld for yourself. And it then becomes habit. You know, mental health's like physical health. It becomes a habit of just doing the same things every day. Now, some days you may not work, but that doesn't mean you failed. You just the more you do, the better it is, and it becomes persistent.
Such wonderful advice. Thank you so much. Now, being a father and also a healthcare worker,
yep.
For those that are listening that have either children or nieces and nephews or some younger people that they'd like to support, what would be your advice around having the conversation to normalise the conversation with younger people?
Look, yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think you need to talk openly a bit about it without being too. I mean, for instance, my children know they've done the video on the Beyond Blue website, and they've seen a little bit of clips. The bits I show them, there's the bits they're in, so that they don't get embarrassed. But the rest is not kind of that I need to see, because some of it may be a bit hard for them to watch. So that's okay. My oldest daughter said to me that her friends thought I was cool, and I said, "Why do you think I'm cool?" It's like, you know, is it because, you know, my hair's got a COVID cut or something? They said, no, because you talk about mental health and it makes it easier for them if they need help. So I've always said I'm there for them. Now, they're girls. I'm a bloke. If you don't feel, you know, comfortable talking to me about something, then you need to speak to someone else. But, you know, I'm always there, and I will, you know, support you through all this if you need to. Never don't think I'm there. They've both had, you know, my oldest was doing a gap year. She was wants to do French and international relations at uni next year, which she's got into, but she's going to spend some time in France, you know, perfecting her French. But of course, she's now back. We got her back because of COVID, so that sort of messed up her year. She sort of worked around it, you know, got a job, earned some money, bought a car. So she's kind of, you know, I think when she initially came back, she thought, oh, I'll come back for a couple of months or go back. It'll be all over. But I think she's kind of realised the circumstances now. So she's done all right through this. And my youngest was year 11 and kind of spent 85% of the time doing her study at home. She's done all right. Unfortunately, we just switched to schools this year. So she was sort of 4 weeks at the school or whatever, and then most of the time it's online. And look, she's, you know, knows where to get help with regard to apps and other sort of things. The kids have been pretty supportive of each other, I must admit. School's been very supportive. And the thing that's probably more the hardest thing for her is, the school online, but also, she just got her IRB driving license. She was training to race in the Aussies. She's very excited, and, we're going down every second weekend down the coast, or every weekend down the coast to train in the surf, and that all went. So her kind of, connection and her fun part of the week went, which hopefully we'll get back. I don't know. She'd measured out the social distancing in an IRB and worked out she could be 1.5 metres apart. So it's probably true. Unless you're the patient, then you have to throw them in the middle. But it's kind of, there's those sort of things. And I think what the advice was, you kind of have a frank, you pick the age group. You don't scare the children, but you kind of, talk them through what is going on, because it is a different time. I mean, I, as a young person, haven't had to go through a pandemic. The last pandemic was 100 years ago, really, of this significance. And, they're being tested, but I think they've done a pretty good job, but there are supports to them. I show my children, the Beyond Blue have got supports for children, or young adults and children, as you say, and Headspace has as well. So, which is the kind of initiative for adolescents and young adults.
Fantastic. I just want to make sure, Janice, did you have, noting your mic is on, did you have a question or comment for Geoff?
I did. I just wanted to say, Geoff, excuse me, I'm a retired nurse, so still registered because I didn't want to give it up because I loved it. And physically I couldn't go back to work, but I understand what you've been through because I've had harassment, intimidation in the workplace.
Okay.
So I totally know what you've been through, and, I was first aid officer at Williamstown for a long time. So I know where you're coming from, so I understand all this. And my ex-partner had depression as well, so I kind of went through it there, and I'm thinking, gosh, Desert Island sounds good. Life-saving's the best, like you said. Your support network, you know. And I understand how hard it is for, medical people, health people. It's very difficult, because you're dealing with it at work and you forget to look after yourself. So
it's probably true. We do sometimes.
Yeah, you do. You just forget about it. You're so tired you don't think about it. So, and I think Life Saving's great for that, and everybody helps to support everyone, Others are better than others, but it's just a really good network, and it's great that you're in it and you love swimming like me.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great to hear another medical profession that's there to help support people. Go healthcare workers, go nurses and doctors, and go life saving. Yahoo!
Thank you, Janice. You're awesome.
It was really great. Loved it.
Cheers. If there's any other questions, pop them into the chat. I am conscious of time. We've just ticked over 1:45. Geoff, I will echo in your final slide that you have up. I share my story. I hope it will allow others not to feel alone. Today, by sharing your story, you have certainly done that, and you are an incredible person, and we are so lucky that we've been able to listen to you today and be in your presence, and you have brought so much to all of us, both in healthcare and not. We thank you very, very much for your time, and best wishes for your daughter's gap year in France and IRB racing, and of course yourself as well. And we look forward to collaborating again with you. Please help me thank Geoff Toogood and we will certainly be in touch. Folks,
Thank
this
you.
session has been recorded and will be available on the webpage to share with your members and your teams and your families. If you need any support, please reach out, and thank you again for investing this valuable time in yourselves. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff. Hang in there, Jeff. We're with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was great.